Popular topics that live on Purpose TV: positivity, parenting, communication. We're going to combine all of them. Positive communication with your child. Positive communication is something that will support our parenting and all kinds of other aspects of our life. Vicki, you're a communication specialist.
That's what they call me.
As a speech language pathologist, I thought I'd pull Vicki in on this video as well, especially as it relates to our parenting. So another expert that we've had here on the channel, Nicolene Peck.
Right.
There's a couple of videos here on the playlist for positive parenting that you can find with Nicolene. Shared some really powerful tips here. She said that you want to maintain a calm voice, calm face, and calm body. This is huge for kids.
Right. They mirror a lot. Children mirror a lot. So if you come to the conversation in a calm manner, it puts you in a situation where they start thinking. I think we've mentioned this before, but every interaction we have with our children invites them to either fight or think. If you come at them with a calm demeanor, you're lessening the chance that they'll come out fighting and be more likely to think.
It's an invitation.
Mm-hmm. It's an invitation.
To join you in that calmness and think and engage with you at a very different level. Mm-hmm. Calm voice, calm face, calm body.
So another technique that you really want to use in communicating is to use good eye contact and to get the attention of the person you're talking to. So often with our kids, we'll just kind of shout something out and we don't even have their attention, or we'll just be talking to them maybe while they're looking down. It's really common for teens. Maybe you have to initiate a conversation while they're looking on their phone. But I've seen more and more parents who are communicating with their kids without ever looking for them from their own phone. So we want to get the eye contact and get their attention before we say something of any value at all.
That feels so obvious.
It does. But if you'll watch yourself, you'll realize that you're not doing it near as much as you think you ought to be.
It's really easy to slip into those patterns where we are so distracted. You mentioned the devices. Mm-hmm. We attended a game with our kids recently, and there was a dinner beforehand, and looking around at people who are there to what? To enjoy each other's company, right? And yet they're spending their time on their device. They're buried in this distraction instead of, like you're saying, maintaining eye contact, physical proximity. These are cues to your child to have a positive communication.
Yeah, and it's saying, I'm present. I'm here for you. I want to talk with you. I want to communicate with you.
Right. So you're cueing them up now for that positive communication.
And that actually brings us to another point, and that is the difference between talking to our child versus talking with our child.
Oh, yeah.
You know, I'll hear parents a lot of the times, the grocery store seems to be a place where I hear a lot of moms talking at their children while they're walking through the store really loudly, and they're not really communicating with their child. Just be aware of when you are talking at your child and try to shift it to be talking with your child.
I just had an image in my head as you were talking about that, because we've all seen it, haven't we? The parent who is having this loud interaction with the child, but it feels like it's for the purpose of everyone else around them.
But not the child.
But not the child, right? They're not connecting with that child. They're trying to put on a display of what a great parent they are. Wow. Let's get back into that connection that has that positive effect with our kids.
Mm-hmm. And another tip for helping with that connection is proximity. It's so important to be in the proximity of your child or the person with whom you're trying to have this conversation.
Not only the physical proximity, but the orientation. So Vicki, if I turn toward you, that has a different effect than if I'm just, turning my head towards you or something like that. So the body positioning will make a difference there too. And kids are really sensitive to this. That's what helps them to know that you mean business. We've mentioned before the strategy of turning your words from garbage into gold. This is one of the things that will help you to do that. Let me make an acknowledgement here too about development. Because obviously kids at different stages of development are going to have different capabilities in a communication setting.
Right.
So positive communication is also where you honor and respect their level of development. You want to keep it on their level. So you're not talking like you would to give an academic paper at the university. You don't want to fly right over their head, but at the same time, you don't want to talk under their ability either.
So we want to keep the communication on the level they are. So that, first of all, that implies that you're communicating with your child enough to know where they are in their level of communication.
Yeah.
Really, you want to be at their level or a little above. You know, as a speech therapist, and I often put that hat on because that's where my training is, we have a great influence in our children by the vocabulary that we use or the way that we speak. Avoid baby talk. There is such a thing as motherese, and that's where you shorten the sentences and the content for a young child, but it's not baby talk. And there's a big difference between that. And so we want to speak at their level. So that's a child, a little older child. You might want to go ahead and use some of the vocabulary, the appropriate vocabulary, especially if you're discussing hard things. Use the appropriate vocabulary and the communication and the words to help them. So you're meeting them at their level and taking them to the next step through your communication.
So it might be a little above their level, but it's couched in the context of exactly where they are developmentally, so that you're bringing them up to learn new vocabulary, for example, but you don't want to talk way over their heads.
Right. You got to stay at their level.
At
and then
their
just
level,
a little bit above.
And then ratchet it up just a little bit for that learning experience. In any conversation about communication, I think we have to get back to one of the very basics, and that is to listen. Listen. We think that communication is talking.
Right.
And it is. And there's this important component of listening. You've got 2 ears and 1 mouth. Let's use them in that proportion.
Right.
Focus on understanding and really listening to. This is such an honoring thing that you can do for your children, to give them your full attention, your physical proximity, like we talked about before, and really listening to where they're coming from.
So we really want to use listening for understanding, that technique, that we're trying to understand what it is they're trying to say. And you know, they might not know how to say it, so you have to listen a little bit longer, a little bit harder. And I think it's also important to give your child a venue for expressing their feelings, especially those confusing feelings. I had one particular son who was just very high-spirited. He felt everything. I felt like he was one of those kids, you know, that feels everything a little bit more than everybody
intensely.
else. Yeah. It's more joy and more sorrow. And so as he was going into those teenage years and going into secondary school, I thought this could be a time where it would be really hard for him to be able to express himself. So we started a nightly routine where every night I would say, okay, it's time for our MSG is what I called it. I said,
MSG.
Our MSG. I said, I want you to tell me something that made you mad. And,
That's
you know,
the M.
sometimes we don't want to let our kids talk about their anger, but they're feeling so much of it. We need to give them a venue sometimes to talk about the hard emotions. So I said, what's something that made you mad?
You know what? This is powerful because a lot of times teens get the reputation of being angry or irritable or upset all the time. I think sometimes it's because they're just looking for a way to express this emotion that they're feeling so intensely sometimes. You're saying give them a venue where they can actually do that. And this is where we can also go back to what we've already talked about before. Up the ante on the vocabulary.
Right.
What other words can we use to describe
now we can
mad?
introduce frustration or irritated or
resentful.
They're different words than just mad.
And oftentimes it's secondary too, because really what they're doing is feeling disappointed or a sense of loss over something that they were hoping for. We can help them to process that if we take the time to listen. So going back to your MSG.
So I'd always give me something that made you mad. And you know what? They could always come up with something.
Oh,
okay?
yeah.
Give me something that made you sad. Because there was a lot of sorrow in their life sometimes, you know, at this teenage years. And then something that made you glad. And so I'd always end on the positive, of course. But this MSG, it just gave them an opportunity to talk about their feelings, his feelings each day. And it helped. And, you know, go back to first one, stay calm, present yourself with a calm face, calm feelings, calm words, because what they say, you're not going to overreact to that because this is your time to listen.
I'm thinking of a colleague who shared with me recently a conversation. It kind of goes back to your MSG thing, Vicki, where he created a venue where it's okay to express what creates some feelings of being mad, sad, or glad. And in this conversation, he simply listened to his teenage son. His teenage son seemed a little puzzled at first, but then started to really open up about some things that were going on in his life. And my colleague asked his son later, he said, "Why did you open up? You've never really opened up like that before." And his son said something really profound. He said, "Because you weren't judging me." Calm voice, calm face, calm body, honoring where he was, allowing him a venue, a place to explore and express those feelings. It's powerful. This and other powerful parenting topics are covered in more depth as Vicki and I take on the Parenting Power Up. Check it out right over there.